artificial intelligence is no longer a distant dream. It's here. Transforming industries, economies, societies. In India, AI revolution is gaining momentum. Initiatives like IndiaAI are building robust ecosystem. With advanced models emerging at a fraction of the cost, India must act fast to stay competitive. As Prime Minister Modi emphasized, we must embrace open source models. India's vision is clear. A regulatory environment that builds public trust, attracts global investments. The time to act is now. Together we can build an AI ecosystem that is inclusive, innovative, and impactful.
आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस और एस्पिरेशनल इंडिया की डबल ताकत भारत के पास है.
IndiaAI, building the ecosystem for India and for the world.
Thank you, Krishna, for that lovely panel on cybersecurity. Let me introduce the panelists on the AI session with me today. I have Rajesh Nambiar, President NASSCOM. Then we have Danesh Dilkhush, Executive Director, Microsoft India and South Asia, Shashi Shekhar Vempati, and Dr. Amitabh Ghosh. Why don't you come here, next to this one? Just leave this one open, next one, yeah. So thank you to all my panelists for joining us this evening. I think if we were to do a random poll of what's the biggest buzz that we have experienced in this decade, I think AI, artificial intelligence, would probably win it hands down. Because the intensity of the buzz and the excitement that even the ordinary people are experiencing in this whole phenomenon is probably the same when the caveman first discovered fire, or when the wheel was invented, or more recently when electricity was invented. Why is that? Because the promise, at least in theory, is that this is going to be a totally new kind of revolution, something that mankind hasn't seen so far. Well, the opinion is divided on how much of that is a hype, but I think it's fair to say that the pace at which AI is progressing and moving along, and now with quantum computer coming in, one doesn't really know what quantum AI is going to do in terms of putting unprecedented computing power in the hands of human beings, and what AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, which is supposed to be as good as human intelligence, if not superior, what that is going to do. I think one of the reasons why everyone is so mortified and petrified of AI also at the same time is because all the inventions that mankind has made so far in the history of our civilization and since mankind has existed, we have pretty much invented technology which has been subservient to us as human beings. They have been dumb to a very large extent. Steam engine was great, aviation was wonderful, it made the world a much smaller place, but none of the technologies, none of the inventions really threaten to become the masters of mankind. But with AI, that's a distinct possibility. We have an AI skeptic with us, a bit of a skeptic, I would say, Amitabh Ghosh, so he'll probably hold forth on that. But then we have AI evangelists, who outnumber Amitabh Ghosh, so I'd be willing to, hear from them and get challenged and be challenged by Amitabh Ghosh. So let me start with a very basic question, which I'm sure everyone wants to know. A lot of buzz, a lot of hype around AI. Every day there's a news coming in, or someone's come up with a new foundational model, or someone's done a model with less computing, all kinds of things. So let me start with Rajesh, because Rajesh heads NASSCOM, and NASSCOM as an industry body does a survey every year which looks at the AI adoption and usage. So Rajesh, I'm going to request you to give us an overview of what is the AI adoption today, what are the use cases we're seeing, which are the industries that are the first to adopt, and what sort of ROIs or impact are we seeing from these adoptions?
So thank you, Shri, for having me here with the panel. You know, AI is, as you were, I was listening to what you were saying in the beginning in terms of saying why AI is very different from every other technology that we have seen so far. So here, till now, I think, you know, humans were trying to figure out what computers were. I think this is the very first time computers are trying to figure out what the human beings can do, which means that the impact that you could eventually have, you know, there were no systems in the past which could think for itself and then take decisions on their own. So most of the people think of AI as a tool, but it's not a tool, it's actually an agent in many ways, so that it gives you a lot more, so that's the pivot that you try to look at it. So AI, especially with the generative AI and then now agentic AI, you're sort of making the pivot. So your question about what is the industry that we're finding, you know, quite honestly, this is my view, and then, you know, when you look at the adoption across individuals, you're finding a lot more adoption compared to enterprises. And there's a reason why, and I think, you know, most of the, when you talk to people, you find why AI is such a great thing and how it changed your life and everything else. People talk about the productivity they have gained, the customer service got automated, you know, which is anyway getting automated before, but then now it's going to be a lot more intelligently automated and so on and so forth. So you find a lot of use cases in people. But the moment you pivot to enterprise level impact, and you find very minimal. There are a lot of pilots which are always being run, but then the real large scale use cases which change the world, you know, you find that it is yet to come. I'm not saying that it won't come, but it is yet to come. So in some sense, in the short run, I think we are overestimating the impact of AI. So maybe I'll agree a little bit with Amitabh Da there, you know, having his view of, you know, I just met him very briefly outside, and you know, even though Sridhar insists that he's a skeptic, but I don't quite believe that he's a skeptic. But in either case, I think in the short run we are overestimating, but in the long run we are underestimating the power of AI and the impact that it could potentially have. So when you look at the industries, I think there's a significant amount of opportunity when you're finding, you know, within, for example, healthcare is a great segment. Financial services, of course, it's going to be one of the test cases where everything will get, you know, in many ways, run by AI, because you find that there's a lot of replacement options right there. You know, you don't need a financial analyst to do what they were doing before, so there is opportunity for you to sort of really get that done a lot more efficiently with an AI system. We believe that the jobs will not get replaced or automated with AI. You know, people with AI might replace with people without AI in some sense. And also, when you look at a job, it is multiple tasks. So some of the tasks will get automated with AI in some sense. So these are all the elements we believe that, you know, and again, you can read a lot more about it in some of our reports, you know, which we believe that will give you a broad sense of where the industry is today.
Right. So before I go to Shashi, you know, Danish, I want to come to you and ask you, what is the experience of markets which are closer to India? For example, you had South Asia as well, and also in other parts of the world. How are you seeing enterprises use AI? What are the jobs that are probably being speeded up, or where humans are getting eliminated, or where humans are using AI to do their jobs better? So what's your understanding from Microsoft point of view?
So I think first, you know, frankly, if you look at India, it's very uniquely positioned today with this sort of intersection of demand and supply for market growth around AI. And it sort of brings in the triangulation of, and AI by itself, you know, as you rightly said, it's just use cases are coming from POC to production. But you require a triangulation of the infrastructure, the talent, the skilling we spoke about in the earlier sessions, the use cases, whether it's enterprise or citizen scale, and most importantly, programs that really will come together to make this far more pervasive. That's the first call out. The second thing, you spoke about agentic AI as well. I think if you're looking at the use cases today, whether it's banking, financial services, automobile, agriculture, from a farming perspective, I think every industry has done POCs. I think in my view, they're coming out of the hype cycle to kind of get in the terrain of real world applications of these at a variety of scale. If you take an example of, the strategic partnership that we signed up with, Upgrad around AI-specific skilling, that's one example. You look at Bajaj Finance, how they are trying to transform their customer experiences using digital transformation and AI-first approach. Or if you look at the Mahindra Group, for example, how they are looking as a conglomerate around financial services, automobile, farms, for example, leveraging these AI applications around that. Or Apollo Hospitals, how they are, again, leveraging the AI-specific application scenarios for things like disease progression as a way to look at it, or genomics. So I think every industry today is coming out of the POC approach, but the more important part is the use cases have to solve a problem. So either you sort of figure out what's slowing you down, or how can you go faster and be more efficient. And that's where the triangulation of infrastructure, skilling, programs, and more importantly, use cases are going to make this really pervasive in my view.
Okay, so that's from a CIO, CTO perspective, but from a CFO perspective, what's the ROI case, like for AI? Is that getting established, or is it still early days? People are still kicking tires and, hoping that it'll pay off?
So interestingly, Satya made this, sort of construct he called out recently, saying it's the tokens per watt per, actually dollar, which means how much of AI work basically is churning out from the energy that's required to run these machines and the models, and then at what price. When this delicate balance comes together, the more important part is what are you achieving? Either improved top line or bottom line, and what are you solving for? So I think from a CFO standpoint, at the end of the day, either I'm going to get more customers and I'm going to retain existing customers, and obviously make more buck out of the investments I'm kind of going after. So I think that's my point of view. Yeah.
Okay. So, Shashi, I'm going to come to you now. This is clearly a very, very important technology, which has far-reaching implication in terms of the power it affords, it's going to afford nations. And there is no doubt that India needs to have its own made in India, made for India, given that India is a fairly complex country, multiple languages, and also the sheer population that could benefit from deployment of such technology. You have talked about technology diffusion and how this government has actually excelled at technology diffusion at scale. But I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about why should India have its own AI? Why can't we just borrow some of the foundational models or the compute power that's available? What's the risk in doing so, and what are the advantages of having our own, let's say, AI stack, so to say?
Right. I think that's a great question. It goes back to your previous panel on cybersecurity, where I think the gentleman who was sitting on that side made a very pertinent observation that geopolitics matters. Look at what happened during COVID, right? If we had not built that vaccine capacity, True. If we had not put in the right investments, we would not have been in any place close to developing an indigenous vaccine, right? And today the geopolitical climate is very conducive between India and the United States. But you can't take that for granted. I mean, look at the US-Europe relationship was always taken for the most closest, very strong relationship. Today there are serious questions if that relationship will continue in the same manner, right? So we cannot be complacent about these things, that certain foundational technologies have to be built. That's one. Second is our diversity. There is a extremely wide diversity of languages, literature, culture in India. And the international models don't actually capture it with all its nuances, all its subtleties. And that's something that we have to build for ourselves. I don't think anybody else will build it for us. So when I was the CEO of Prasar Bharati, for example, one of the steps that we took was we said, we'll give the entire archives of Doordarshan and All India Radio to IIT Kanpur. Why don't you build some models, algorithms around it? Right? I think we need to see more of such efforts. And I think Abhishek, when he's here, he'll probably talk about it. The government has done a great job with the IndiaAI mission to create this repository, AI Kosh. But then that's still largely public data. I think we need a broader movement where even the private data is made available to model developers. So we break down these barriers. We see a whole lot more model development in India.
Right. Okay. So I think, Rajesh, this question is to you. Indian IT powerhouse, absolutely no doubt about it. I mean, what it has achieved, let's say, since the 90s is phenomenal. A lot of our growth is courtesy IT industry. But has the industry, in some sense, missed the boat in being an AI pioneer itself? Why is it that a DeepSeek is coming out of China from a hedge fund manager, and why hasn't it come from any of our big companies from India?
No, so I won't get into the debate of whether, again, going back to what Sashi was saying, well, there is a need for us to create our own foundational models, etc. Let's also not forget that at the end of the day, it is the impact that you could have create. So we believe that when you look at our, in the IT industry today, it's a very variety of companies. It's not just one type of company, right? I mean, so you have, at one end, we have all the IT service providers, the large and small, who are focused on services, which actually, if you go back and look at the history, and as you mentioned, without this Y2K and without all the maintenance job that people did for the rest of the world, you don't have an industry today. Today we are approaching $300 billion in terms of size. So this is a massive industry which was created, and there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, we don't have to be ashamed of the fact that
Not at all.
it was done by the services industry. I mean, of course, there's a lot of debate always saying that, services as a products and so on and so forth. But when you look at the breadth of this industry, so that is one segment of it. Then you have a segment which, which is the BPM segment, which does a lot of processing work, and we do a lot of money. I mean, it generates a lot of employment and so on and so forth. So that's another segment which is actually pivoting into a lot of data and AI services type of work, which is again a second segment. And you have a third segment which creates products, and then you have a fourth segment which is deep. I can keep on and on, right? Now there's a new overlay of all of this called the GCC segment, which is a phenomenal growth opportunity for a country like India. So when you look at an industry, you can't be fixated on saying that, why didn't I create a DeepSeek versus, of course, obviously there is a segment which works on that, and, Sashi, you are maybe a lot more familiar with the companies which actually focuses on foundational models like an LLM. But let's not forget that fact, there are multiple things which will have to work before you would really solve a problem, which could be a foundational model, which could be a curated model around. On top of that, maybe a reasoning model, maybe there is an SLM which has to be built on top of that, maybe there's an industry model which will have to build on top of that, and somebody will have to integrate all of that to your systems to eventually solve the problem at an enterprise level. It's not that just you create a DeepSeek today. I honestly believe, and again, Sashi, please feel free to disagree with me, LLMs will become commodity at some point in time. So as a nation, should we build LLM? Absolutely, for the reasons which Sashi was talking about. You got to have technological independence, sovereignty that you need to build.
No, just the context. I mean, LLM is nothing but the data that we feed in, and it's a reflection of us and our society.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
we
I'm
need
saying
to have that.
At some point in time, LLMs will become, when I say commodity, I think you should be able to build systems which are truly artificial intelligence systems, which will leverage not just one LLM, but two. I mean, maybe we will leverage Sashi's system on top of maybe an OpenAI, maybe also on the DeepSeek. You should be able to do that, and that's what is where the interesting part is going to be. You're solving a problem by leveraging all of this. So to your initial question of saying, can a Indian company build an equivalent of a DeepSeek? Absolutely, yes.
And is that going to come? Can we see it in the next 2 to 3 years?
I don't know. I don't want to predict what I don't know. But there are lots of companies which are building some of these models. And again, Abhishek would have mentioned to you with this AI Kosh, which they opened up. They got 67 applications, and I'm sure you're one of them as well. I mean, these companies which you actually signed up for building some of this, of course they will build it. And now that they know that they could build it a lot cheaper than what the original OpenAI type of investment. So, I mean, we look at all of that. I think the key would be not get fixated on the core technology, which somebody will and the companies will. But for a country like India, you got to get fixated on the fact, are we solving social issues? Are we solving at scale? Are we solving problems which is very big for India? So that is the level of, I believe that will become, it's not about creating the bigger processor or maybe a bigger multiple parameters and you create an LLM. That is okay, but I think India, what we need as a country is to have technology which will solve a real problem for the billion people that we have. I mean, that's what UPI did. That's what, to some extent, Aadhaar did. I mean, with the DPI, the basis that we put together, that is the kind of technology, and that is the kind of artificial intelligence we need to build over a period of time. Whether that is by leveraging some of the existing LLM, making our own language-based LLM, creating models with our, taking advantage of our diversity, all of that is fantastic. But let's not forget that it has to be a solution that you're building for the larger population that we have, as opposed to having a wonderful technology for 10 people in the room. Yeah?
Okay. Fair point. I think Mr. Abhishek Singh is on his way and should be joining us momentarily. But before I go back to Danish, I have a question for Dr. Ghosh. Dr. Ghosh, I think China is not just about innovation, but I think China has also proved that it can innovate frugally. If you look at DeepSeek R1, the reasoning foundation model which they built, there are many unique things about it which caused a very big company to lose its market cap significantly on the day when DeepSeek was announced. It shows that if you're able to approach a problem slightly differently, for example, use of mixture of experts, or how do you train your data, or how do you bring certain innovation to how you build the foundation model itself, it's possible to come up with a model which is different from or a format which is different from what Silicon Valley practices, which is like, a brute force of money, engineering power, and everything. So how do you think India should approach this whole issue of building our own, let's say, the IndiaAI stack? What would your advice be as a scientist who's been in the US for 30 years, works with NASA, is working on the Mars rover mission? So as an aside, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Ghosh is literally the man who controls the Mars rover. So when he sends the instruction, only then the Mars rover moves, literally.
Right. So thank you for the introduction. There's so many things I agree with what Rajesh said, and I will take a little time to answer your question. So I think we are getting too caught up in national, China, India, etc. See, this DeepSeek, whatever happened, is so for my PhD, I did computer simulation of an evolution of an asteroid. So it's solving PDEs, partial differential equations. You have something called sparse matrices, and I think Rajesh will be familiar with that. So, so essentially, the strategy behind DeepSeek is to compute those solutions which matter, not compute everything.
Exactly, there's a mixture of experts, yeah.
Right, so it is just it's not nations, it's not technology, it's not throwing money at the problem. It's just maybe two smart people thinking that, well, so have you written a for loop in a computer? And I'm sure some people do loop, right? So if you write it in a different order, the runtime is different because you get it from cache or you get it from memory. And I know this because I used to work for, my master's was with you see the computer rankings? It comes from his lab, Jack Douglas. So I actually, I took my asteroid code and the runtime decreased by 99.99%. So it's just strategy. India can do this, and I don't know, it's the wrong thing to say India can do it. I think we get too caught up with India. Anybody in the world can do it, including somebody from India.
So I'm worried about India, so I'm going to ask you only about India very much.
Yes,
I don't care about others.
Yes, that's a fair question, but I'm just saying that's not how things work. It's all based on the fundamentals. And to address your wider thing of being an AI critic, I'm not an AI critic, as Rajesh pointed out. I'm just telling you.
I didn't say critic, I said skeptic.
Not a skeptic. I'm just telling you where the technology lies beyond all this hype and hysteria. So one is, it's just another numerical method. It is not something very novel. There are many numerical methods. This is one. So if you take ultrasonogram is an inversion technique, if you call it AI, well, you can call it AI. It's okay, and it's not intelligence. It's not human intelligence. It still does not know how to learn to learn. So if you don't give it the right data set, it will not learn. Okay, and then we are obsessed about applications right now, right? So if you listen to Jeff Bezos, what does he think? AI is going to be not a vertical, but a horizontal, which will make things more efficient. Okay, so we are not going to get a magic solution. It will probably make the car manufacturing process a little more easier and, right, maybe education, but it's not going to change. And then as Rajesh said, so if you were old enough and you witnessed the 2000 crash, right, .com bubble, right? So you had you had companies which were supplying dog food, which were valued at $100 million, which all disappeared. Amazon came much further. So that was the true application of the internet. And so as Rajesh said, we are not there yet. There's no application of the internet. There's no monetization. All these companies, why is NVIDIA stock so high? Because all these Microsoft and these 4 or 5 companies are incredibly, they are racing with each other to make that AI product, and so they don't need the chips. But as soon as you have the AI product, as Rajesh said, it will be commoditized. It will be useless. So whatever all these companies are building will not be valuable. So the biggest thing about AI, the end product and the monetization is not clear. And also the energy cost. So you're looking for restaurants near Bharat Mandapam, right? I can make an AI ChatGPT search and I can make Google search.
No, I think what AI will probably do is not just tell you which are the 4 restaurants, but also tell you which one makes the menu which is closest to what you like, make the booking for you at what time. So that's the agentic AI, which will probably be the big thing that happens this year.
But who's going to pay for it? If it is 20 times the energy, who's going to pay for it? Right now, of course, they are in this, all these Google, Microsoft, everybody's flush with cash. But at some point, they will say that, well, if there are 100 billion searches going on, who is going to pay for the energy? So they are going to make that restrictive. And so are you going to pay $20 a month to get that better recommendations, or would you just do free Google search, right?
Me, speaking for myself, I'd probably pay the $20.
Well,
because it makes my life so much better and
that's
easier.
That's just you. That's terrific, but that's just you. I mean, and the question of a billion people and AI, see, the $200 is the income of maybe 90% of Indians. So something that they will use and pay for, you have to really think about it. Right?
Fair point. I think India still, a lot of people don't use cell phones despite the cost of this thing. But Shashi, let me come to you. I think what Dr. Ghosh made in between was a very important point, which is about innovation literally can come from anywhere. It doesn't have to be only purely out of Valley or China. How should India approach, how should we innovate for AI?
See, let me first react to what Rajesh said,
Sure.
because I actually lived through this whole IT services cycle, right? I spent almost more than a decade at Infosys and then came out of Infosys. So it's not that, we're obsessed or caught up. Some of the Indian IT services guys were already building IP. A lot of machine learning work was happening. In fact, Infosys was one of the first to put money into OpenAI.
That's right.
I think we missed the opportunity there to have, got some early adopter advantage. I do understand that things will get commoditized. I fully agree. Also take his point that, it's very expensive, the current model, very power intensive. Nobody's, it's not going to scale at the population of India to, to do $20 subscriptions and so on. That's not going to work. We need to find, innovative methods. And I think that is where we should look back at our journey in terms of adopting new technologies. It has always been in terms of quantum leapfrog, right? We didn't take the same linear path like the West did with telephones. We just jumped to mobile and, look at what has happened. Same thing with cashless payments. With UPI, we just did that leapfrog and now it has just exponentially grown, right? So we'll have to find frugal methods where we can leapfrog, and it'll probably have to be AI at the edge, which is not compute intensive, which is probably more purpose-built, very targeted use cases, because we don't need math Olympiad level of intelligence to be available to all billion Indians, right? What we need is to be able to do intelligent stuff with our phones. For example, I was the other day, one of your competitor channels had invited me to a debate, and they sent a car, and the driver was trying to find his way, during peak rush hour, and I asked him, why don't you use Google Maps? He says, mujhse chalaya nahi jata. So that is the barrier we've got to break, because there is a large population which just cannot deal with this interface. So can we use AI intelligently, natural interfaces in Indian languages to make these people productive? He doesn't need maths Olympiad level skill. He just needs to find his way around, daily tasks, right? So I think that is the approach we need to take with innovation.
So since you are plugged in with the entire AI community, AI for India, give us some cool ideas or projects that people are working on currently, which will probably see the light of day in a year or 2 or 3.
Sure, I think to Rajesh's point, right, there's a lot of hype and obsession around LLMs, but then a lot of the real enterprise work is happening in models which are not necessarily language models. For example, there is a startup that we've been mentoring out of Bangalore called Parallaxia. They look at CCTV camera feeds in the Indian context to do a whole bunch of computer vision-based analytics, real time, for manufacturing plants, for their safety, for their quality assurance, compliance, retail outlets for fraud detection. So we've said, we've given them some funding saying that why don't you guys build a model for public spaces where we monitor our streets, we monitor our neighborhoods, perhaps that real-time analytics can be used by law enforcement, municipal authorities. Because if you look at the Indian context, right, it's very chaotic, it's not structured. They have large crowds, you have all kinds of random things happening. How do you make sense of these public spaces, right? So that is one example. Another example is this startup out of Pune, which has taken a very different approach to knowledge modeling. Because if you look at what the LLMs are doing today, it's very, very unreliable, right? They hallucinate, they make up papers that don't exist, they give you citations that are fictitious. You can't use it for real research. So how do you use AI for real research where your accuracy levels are 98, 99%, you're making very authentic references, you are making knowledge connections, which can accelerate your whole research process in a very reliable and accurate manner. And then these guys have done that with very low computing requirement, to the professor's point, right? So there are Indian startups which are doing this innovation. What is lacking is they need that larger ecosystem support. And this is where I would appeal to Rajesh and NASSCOM.
Yeah.
That, as an industry, I understand, Infosys may not be able to do it, or a Wipro alone may not be able to do it. But as an industry, why don't you come together and pool the resources and create a model where these startups can be supported?
Yeah, even for compute, Rajesh, I mean, is it possible for NASSCOM to, get money from all your members and maybe, set up a infrastructure which is available to all young startups to use as well?
So today we have a deep tech club, which is curated and then sort of run by NASSCOM in some sense. We do something similar to that. We don't necessarily fund them directly, but we do make sure that they have access to funding in many ways. Again, if Abhishek was here, he would talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I'm missing him.
The money itself is, I believe, an issue for the startups for sure. I think it is not the lack of funds, but the ability for us to get the damn funds to the deep tech startup system is the problem. So we have 10,000 crores allotted last year. Only 200 crores or so was really spent. The remaining we could not. I mean, the AI mission could not really disburse because of the fact that there was so much of structural issues in terms of getting who gets it, how they get it, how they apply for it. So lots of ease of doing business is something which we take a lot of pride in at the higher levels of the political system. But then when it gets to the implementation, all of us know that it's not easy to do any of those. So going back to the deep tech startups, they need patient capital. One of the things which are, I'm sure, Sashi, you would appreciate that, is that they need a few things. They don't need too many things. They need patient capital. They need a little bit of help on market access broadly. They might need a little bit of help on the getting the right talent and so on and so forth. Access to sort of test out stuff within corporations, and access to making sure that they get the right solutions implemented. But biggest thing is the patient capital, not just capital, because there are people who can give you capital for if you're a B2C company and doing something which they can understand. I think they get enough capital. But then the moment it is things like deep tech, which requires, especially involves AI, which takes a longer gestation period. It's a big time lag issue which we're talking about. That gets into a bit of an issue. And now, again, it's not, again, as I mentioned, there is enough, this particular budget, there's allocated another 10,000 crores.
Right.
It's a question of how do you really get that? So there's a mechanism. So last week I was with the PSA talking about what is the right way for us to get this problem solved. So it is less about not having funds in India and more about the right method for us to distribute it to the right people. So that is the broken chain, if you may, the broken link, if you may.
So before I go to Danish for the next question, so how do you intend to fix that? How can we fix that problem? Because that needs to be fixed.
It absolutely needs to be fixed. I think this is something which we have to. There are multiple segments of our government which we need to work together to make sure that we find it easier for disbursement of some of this. So, I mean, again, there are multiple departments involved, multiple agencies involved, etc. I don't know whether, Sashi, you have a view as to how hard or easy it is for somebody to sort of access it. Certainly we can play a role as NASSCOM, as an industry body, we should do this, but we also have to understand, where exactly does it fail in terms of getting the right funding.
Shashi, ideas?
Yeah. So because I've been on both sides of this debate during my term at Prasar Bharati, I think this is a challenge, right? Getting the right support to the right people, and we actually went through that whole process on another deep tech area around direct-to-mobile broadcasting. So we have to find ways. We have to find ways, and I think there are international models that we can learn from. One of the models, for example, is the DARPA model, right, where it is not so much about having the scientific pool there, but it is about the program managers who know how to execute and get this done.
Exactly.
Right. So can we adopt some of those best practices? So the ANRF that has been created, this new 1 lakh crore fund that is being created for private sector R&D, I think that requires that kind of a mindset and approach. That is the only way we'll get it, and hence it'll have to be a combination of people like Abhishek Singh, very pioneering.
His timing has been impeccable.
We were all talking about you right now, saying that what is the best way for us to get the funding to the startup, and I was telling
but
that
I'll
it's
just
not
add,
for the lack of funds, but it's more about getting to the right place. Sorry.
I'll just add one point. The government has done its job. It has walked 10 steps. I think industry should walk the remaining 90 steps.
Agreed.
Absolutely
Otherwise,
good.
not,
So first of all, a round of applause for Mr. Abhishek Singh for having joined us this evening. I know he runs a very busy schedule, sir. Really appreciate that you joined us this evening. We are very grateful to you for that. Before you came in, we were talking about India AI stack and why India should have its own AI stack. I'll start with that, and then come to some of the problems that both Rajesh and Shashi have been talking about. The first question I have for you is that an RFP was put out for foundational models. We invited a lot of startups to, send in their request for proposal. How many have responded? What is the status? When do we see some DeepSeek emerging from India?
We are not trying to build a DeepSeek from India. What we are trying to build is an Indian foundation model, a model which is trained on Indian data sets, and we strongly believe that given the talent that we have and given the expertise that we have, because our engineers are behind all the foundation, most of the foundation models that you see. Our engineers have contributed to Microsoft, they contributed to OpenAI, they contributed to Google DeepMind. So that way we have the talent. So with this in objective, we felt that the two ingredients that are required for building a foundation model will be to make compute available and to make data sets available. So we first started with creating an environment where we should have compute on which models can be trained. So that was the first RFP that we had floated last year, and we empaneled 10 vendors who have kind of set up 14,000 GPUs to begin with, not a large number, but at least basic minimum required with which an Indian foundation model can be trained. And we also have set up a datasets platform which will ensure that datasets are available for training models. So, and with this in mind, with this in place, we have published a call for proposals on 30th of January, as you are aware, and we said that it will be a running call for proposal. It's not that only one time I am getting. Every 15th of every month, we said proposals will be taken and we evaluated. When we published it, I was expecting around 10, 12 proposals to come in, and we thought that we will evaluate all of them within a month, but to my surprise, by 15th February, we got 67 proposals, out of which 22 were for large language models, 45 were for small language models, and currently they are in the final stages of evaluation, and we should be able to kind of identify the first set of proposals to be funded within the next 2 weeks or so. And but I must add that apart from those 67, by 15th of March, the second cycle ended, and in the second cycle we have got another 120 proposals. So in all, we have almost 200 proposals, and again after 15th March also we are continuing to get proposals. So 200 proposals are there, which shows the capability that we have. So in short, to your question, that we have around 200 proposals, and hopefully the first set of proposals that will be funded will be identified within the next 2 weeks.
Right. And in terms of the GPU, what is the compute power that has been put in the public pool as of now? If I'm a startup working on, let's say, some AI model, what is the access I have in terms of the computing power?
Presently, we have around 14,000 GPUs which are available in the public pool provided by 10 service providers. We have set up a compute portal on which startups and users and researchers can go and place the demand for the GPUs. And we have negotiated a very attractive rate also, around the average rate of 115 rupees per GPU per hour. And on top of that, 40% will be borne by the IndiaAI mission. So the net cost for a startup or for a researcher who is building training a model or building an application will be only around 67 rupees per GPU per hour, which is amongst the lowest in the world.
Right. And so the minister also mentioned that within 3 to 5 years, India will also have its own computing power, which is as good as what's available elsewhere. How are we on that? And is that an aggressive timeline? What's your view on that?
See, work is going on. See, India Semiconductor Mission, we all know that we have started taking steps, and the first chip from India will be coming out later this year. But at the same time, our another strength, apart from software and AI code writing, is in design, because almost 20% of the chip designers are from India, and they are again part of almost every chip design company. So there is strong belief that if we give incentives, and we have a design-linked incentive scheme under which we will be promoting our companies which are building or which are working on chip design, along with our researchers. The RISC-V work we already know. So all the EDLI tools are being given on the Chips to Startup program. So a lot of steps have been taken, and work is ongoing, and we do believe that we should be able to come out with our own GPU chip in a few years from now.
Right, that's wonderful. So just as you were walking in, Rajesh was talking about this insane amount of money which is available for AI startups. Rajesh said 10,000 crore, out of which only 200 has been 200?
Last year, but this year we will, 10,000 plus another 10,000 has been allocated. So
Yes.
there's enough money.
So I think the issue is of dispersal, and there are many, I think, red tape involved in it, the coordination, approvals, all those involved. How can we cut those red tape, because this is a mission critical, kind of a task for us? What can the government do to simplify the procedure for allocation of money which is sitting?
See, like government money to spend, you need to have contracts, and you need to have the processes to be able to spend. So as I mentioned, like the first year, the expenditure in IndiaAI compute might be very low, but we are poised for a larger expenditure now. For example, with the compute tender finalized, when people will be accessing the compute, the 40% subsidy will go. So the money dispersal will become very fast because that contract is in place. Similarly, as I mentioned, for the foundation model, we already have the proposal there which are under finalization. And any foundation model which will be funded will be consuming funds. They will be requiring around 200, 300 crores or maybe 50 million. So the fund dispersal will be much faster this year. This year we have a target of around 2,000 crores for another IndiaAI mission. And I do believe that maybe towards the end of the year, we may be approaching Ministry of Finance for more funds. And Finance Ministry has assured us that if we are able to absorb what has been given to us at the budget, then they will be allocating more funds if we need it. We also have a fund of funds, startup financing, which we are working with the DPIIT and Startup India for the deep tech startup fund of funds, and for spending funds from that, under which funds will be given to startups. We have had long discussions with the VCs and with angel investors and with startups, and all of them have kind of come out with this recommendation that don't just give grants, link it to, and instead of giving grants, we should be co-investing with the VCs and the angel investors so that there is accountability and the funds can be better utilized. So we have come out with a schema for using the funds in this manner, and that would ensure that the time taken to allocate funds for startups as also for compute or for foundation models will be much lesser compared to what it has been earlier.
Right.
Yes. So I think, if you look at why is it not being allocated? And your point was, you can go to the DARPA model or whatever. See, I think there are very local contracting rules and rules in general which prevent. So for example, so I'm in touch with one of the artificial intelligence departments at one of the IITs. So say the award of the contract is 30th April. You have to spend the money by, say, 30th September, otherwise you lose it. But say there's an election going, and so there is some sort of a thing that for the first 3-4 months you cannot put out an ad and hire people. And it can be only used for payroll and not for buying equipment. A lot of the translational research grants are, they're losing the money just because, that timeline does not match. So if you don't spend it by 30th September, it's gone.
Okay. So just to give you a context, Mr. Singh, that's Dr. Amitabh Ghosh. He's a scientist with NASA who's part of the Mars rover project. He's our special guest today. And he brings his US experience, plus he's worked on AI himself. So that's the context here.
The US model is actually very good. If you look at the Y Combinator model, very simple that we give you X amount of grant, we take X amount of equity. So you don't get into valuations and you don't get into like how much equity to take and all. So that's also one model that we are looking at.
Absolutely.
But I would like to say that it's not that by 30th September lapses, money is available for the whole financial year. So under the new CNA rules which are there in Ministry of Expenditure, the idea is that money will be available for what you need in this year's budget. So, this remaining 2 days, whatever I am able to spend, that money is available with me, and whatever is my balance will be recouped back, and then I will have to seek a fresh approval next year. And then with regard to whether I can use it for capital expenditure or whether I can use it for manpower, this depends on how you design your project. And a lot of procurement problems also has been resolved with the government e-marketplace coming in. Because earlier the tenders and the entire procurement process used to take a lot of time. So the government e-marketplace, which does a record number of transactions these days, enables that we are able to procure things much faster. So of course it's not that things cannot be improved, it should be improved, it can be improved much more. But institutions like IIT Bombay, which is working on Bharat Gen, which will be again another source from which we can get a foundation model. They are going very fast with the TIS. They got the Technology Innovation Hub grant from Department of Science and Technology under the National Mission for Cyber Physical Systems. So they are spending their money pretty fast. And what they have done is that they set up a Section 8 company. So that way, the Section 8 money lies with the Section 8 company. And that is they have more flexibility in hiring and being able to use their funds. So in several of our programs, we are coming up with such models which ensure that the usual delays associated with the traditional way of spending money is minimized.
You know, Danish, earlier you talked about how there is probably an overbuild happening in terms of AI, but the other argument which the optimists and the AI bulls put out is that once this technology, is going to become, more diffused, more people we're actually going to need even more of what we have right now, which is the argument which NVIDIA's, CEO has also been making. So what is the Microsoft point of view on this? This is obviously early days, but do we see AI, the boom, like going into decades ahead, and it becoming a much bigger phenomenon than what it is today? And therefore, maybe there's less reason to be so skeptical or calling it the revolution has ended even before it has begun.
So I'll bring again, I'll bring it in context of India as I started my discussion earlier as well. I think that the demand-supply factor, I think it's really poising us to be becoming, I would say, in some form or shape, a part of the global landscape of AI, shape the future of AI, right? In terms of the citizen scale applications that we have got. AI is not about anymore just promise, it's promise to proof. We're already there today, right? I think it's about, again, triangulating between the infrastructure, the AI literacy, and the use cases, right? Which basically will drive the outcome. And I think and while I was hearing so many examples, one example that kind of came to my mind is around, in cars we have ADAS today, right? Which is transforming the way I drive my car. And that's the way you should think about it. At the end of the day, there is a tool, a co-pilot, for example, which will change the way I'm solving problems. And there'll be enough and more problems ahead of us. And the only constant is going to be change. So I think we have to look forward to that.
After it is, autonomous is going to be here, so you don't need to drive at all. Yeah. So I'm at the end of the session, but I haven't taken any questions from the audience. So I'm just going to do 3 questions. Gentlemen, please state your name, your affiliation, and then who do you want that question to be answered by?
Yeah, hi. My name is Atul Govil. I represent India Glycols, and I'm also part of some of the boards for tech forums, especially the SAP user group in India. So now what I clearly see is AI is, like we saw coronavirus some time back. AI is like a tsunami. It's coming. And most of us, because of our experience, all of us sitting in the room on the table would have at least 20, 25 years of experience already. Because of our experience, we believe that it may not impact us and it may impact others. But basis my experience, what I can tell you is in next 2 years, we would see a lot of jobs getting displaced, not just globally. Globally, of course, you will find countries like China and other lighthouse companies also who have already started working on those lines in terms of, one, reducing the intake of fresh recruits, and also they are basically making manpower redundant.
Is there a question? Because
There's a question, yeah. The question is that what is NASSCOM and what are our industry ministers and others, what are they doing to make sure that the manpower which is blissfully working under some leadership or under some ministries, what would they do once they find that their jobs are at risk because of these agentic AIs or these robots, humanoids, which are being pumped in the system? So we need to really work with the industry to make sure that our team, our organizations, the members, they remain employable, gainfully employed thereafter. Because once all of this starts coming mainstream, already these lighthouse big companies, the Infosys of the world, the HCLs of the world, they are already leveraging it to develop software. They are already using it to automate many processes within their companies. And all of that will then get replicated across user companies like us. So my request to the panel is that instead of bothering about creating our own foundation model or an SLM, we should rather see how to harness this and how to make it mainstream to make sure our education and our workforce becomes aware of how to leverage it and remain relevant thereafter.
Mr. Singh, you want to take a stab at it?
Yeah. Thank you. In fact, part of the question, your initial part of the question, we've already answered. That point is well taken. Skilling is important. Reskilling is important. Industry also realizes it. Government also realizes it. We are working together. But that will remain very, very a priority area for do. The second part in which towards the end you alluded that instead of focusing on LLMs and SLMs, we should focus more on skilling, training and trying to build applications. I would say that it's not either or. It's both. And more importantly, LLMs are something that we need, that's slowly getting into a sector where it will become strategic. We already are seeing limitations, especially with the diffusion order coming in, wherein these technology products, whether it's compute or whether it's models, will not be easily available as time progresses. If we do not build in the capacities when we still have access to some of the compute and to the data sets and to the models and the algorithms which are there, we will lose out. So just like we have built capabilities in the space sector or the atomic energy, nuclear, similarly we do need to build our own LLMs. One, to train it on Indian data sets, and number two, the open source LLMs also that we are talking about might not remain open source all the time. And if we don't invest well in time, we may end up losing in the long run. So that's why both are important. Skilling as also investing in LLMs and SLMs.
I think it's enough said. I just want to, perfect answer by the way. And you should not assume that everybody is asleep at the wheels at this point in time, right? There's a lot of work which goes on today in ensuring that this exactly what you're talking about, ensuring that the population is taken care of. I'll give you some numbers. First of all, the BPM industry, as we know before, it is actually it pivoted already, as I mentioned before, into data and AI services. Most of them have actually pivoted into that. So that's number one. Number two, just the Indian companies alone have trained 1.5 million people. Not everybody at the same level. About 450,000 of them, 4.5 lakhs if you may, they are at a level where they can implement AI solutions and so forth. This 1.5 million is AI enabled in some sense, because they can do a lot of work within the AI. There are multiple things that you could do. And Sashi, you talked about data cleansing and data management and so on. So there's a lot of work which goes on to make sure that we are pivoting and then making sure that you're not caught unaware. Suddenly one day you wake up and then see that happens. I also believe that it's going to be a gradual process. It's not a one-time activity.
Okay. So on that note, I must end. No, you can take this conversation offline. I have no time at all now. But I want to thank all my panelists, Dr. Amitabh Ghosh, Mr. Abhishek Singh, Dhanesh, Rajesh, and Shashi. Thank you so much. I think we had a dream panel on AI. So a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for the panelists.